If you've been with us here on Sunday mornings, we have been working through the Old Testament. We're looking at how the Old Testament points to Christ. And you're invited to join us if you've not been here. Hey, it's Easter Sunday. You should join us. But we are looking at the Old Testament all the way to Christmas, how it points to Jesus. And tonight, we're going to look at someone who is a character from the Good Friday story, but found in the Old Testament. And that would be the veil that separates the Holy of Holies in the temple. And so there's this instruction, there we go, in Exodus that said, we're going to put this curtain up. It's going to be adorned. It's very beautiful, all this wonderful stuff. And it's going to be hung specifically where the Ark of the Covenant, that would be the representation of God on earth. They put the Ark in this room, and then the curtain was outside, and then the rest of creation is protected. It's kept separate from where the Ark of the Covenant is. And like this curtain was huge. Like this is not your Target spring sale, okay? This was 60 feet high, 30 feet wide. They said it was as thick as a handbreadth. So look at your hand and go, wow, okay. That's how thick the curtain was supposed to be. It was the Mishnah, which is this collection of oral tradition from the Jewish religion, says that this curtain was so large it took 300 people to carry it. So heavy, so big, so everything. So this is a big deal. This was up there. It was very important. So if you want to follow along, I'm going to be in Hebrews 9. I'm not going to read all of it because I believe you have the ability to read. But I'm going to put it up, and it talks about how important the veil was. This, like I said, this separated God on earth from all of creation. This is basically the door to God's bedroom. Like God lived here. This is where everyone else is. And this was meant to be a protection for us. It kept us safe. It kept us separated from God simply because of who he is. I mean, he is God. His holiness, his power, his might, his majesty, all this, like we can't stand in the presence of that. He's God and I'm not. And so with God here, there would be this curtain then that would protect us from all that. And as Pastor Mark talked a little bit on Sunday as well, once a year, someone would get to go and talk to God face to face. I can't even imagine what that would be like, but to go in and talk directly to God. And they would do it to pray for the forgiveness of people. I mean, what better prayer could there be? So they would go in and they would talk to God face to face on our behalf to ask for the people as a whole to be forgiven. Like this is, you don't just come to God willy-nilly with whatever you want. Like God is not at our beck and call. So it was this understanding that there was all these rules, all these understandings, all these stuff going on because it's God. In the vastness of his holiness in this one place. This is where he's at. So that was then, but suddenly on Good Friday, while Jesus is on the cross, that just rips in two. It's just gone. Can you imagine being the poor guy that was working that day? Like, and realize, you know the Easter story, like, Jesus has been on trial all morning. He's had the bigwigs after him for years. They finally got him. Trust me, no one important is working at the temple today. Like, this is going to be the intern at best. Like, this is probably his first time in charge, like, woohoo! And then he looks behind him and goes, oh, darn it. Like, if you could ruin your first day, this is how to do it. Like, this poor guy working. I'll be honest, when I picture this, I picture a young girl named Chelsea that I went to church with many years ago. When I lived up in Canada, we would do children's church on Saturday. So every Saturday at 2 o'clock, all the kids would come to church. Our children's pastor, her name was Pastor Judy. She would drive the bus around, go pick up kids, bring them all here, and they would all have church, which is fantastic. And Pastor Judy, being a good children's pastor, would always get the older kids to help out. So one of the jobs was to do sound. That was a big deal. You're the sound person. Now, when I say do sound, I mean hit play on the CD, hit pause on the CD, Like you can't touch anything else, but you get to sit by it. Oh, yeah. So you'd be able to sit by the soundboard, which was a piece of garbage. But they don't know that. They thought it was cool. So you're sitting by this soundboard and like, oh, this is fantastic. So Chelsea one day, and I remember this vividly, Chelsea one day was the person who got to do sound. She was 11 years old. She's like, I get to do sound. Hit play, hit pause. She was doing great. And then the soundboard exploded. And I am not exaggerating. I mean, boom, fireball, smoke, Chelsea. So we were like, it was awesome, don't get me wrong, but we're like, oh my gosh. So we were like, Chelsea, are you okay? And she's like, I hit play, I hit pause, I didn't touch anything, I didn't do it. We're like, Chelsea, we know the soundboard is a piece of trash. Are you okay? I didn't do it, I just sat here and I didn't do anything. And she freaking out. Okay. I don't know, just me. This is how I picture that guy working. Can you imagine when all the bigwigs come back? They're high-fiving. We got Jesus. They're having their day, and they come and they're like, what did you do? And he's like, what did I do? Like, I'm just minding my business, doing my job, because none of you all are here. Suddenly it goes dark in the middle of the day for no reason whatsoever. I light all the candles. I open a window. There's my great-great-uncle Jeremiah. He's been dead for 20 years, waving like that. There's earthquakes. I didn't do anything. Like, Okay, maybe it didn't happen like that. But in my head, I hear this poor guy like, what in the world? Like, what would you do? Because I would be scared out of my mind. Forget the fact that God himself just ripped a curtain that has been a part of what we do for worship for 1,500 years. That was there for a reason. That was to protect us from the holiness of God. Like I wonder if the guy, like the second it was ripped, was like, I can't look. Like, what am I going to do? How do I do my job? This was there for our protection because God is holy. There's an understanding that we don't mess with this. We don't just do whatever we want. This is God. There's a story of Aaron's sons, Moses' nephews. Their names were Nadab and Abihu. And they were given the rules of how to worship God. This is what we do. And part of worshiping God in the temple was you had holy fire. It was an incense. It was a smell that was associated with worship of God. And these two guys said, yeah, we'll just do what we want. And they made up their own that they thought smelled better. And they thought, that's what we'll do. And the story goes that when they did that, fire shot out of the Holy of Holies and burned them up. And it was at this point they went, oh, wait, this is a big deal. Like, we have to be a little bit more serious and reverent with what we do. And Moses was given this horrible idea of, like, what do we need to do here? And so Moses is given instruction, and God's like, you don't get to mourn for them because this is what we need to do. You need to understand where we're at. You need to understand that this is not willy-nilly. When we come to worship, when you come to be in my presence, this is the most holy thing you can do. And we need to treat it as such. And so that's what they would do. I mean, they would have this thing to protect them and keep them safe. But you know what? This is even just keeping them safe, not just from God's holiness. This kept me safe from any responsibility. I mean, if I, an average person, were to go to the temple, I don't get to talk to God. The priest does that. So if I want to pray to God, I don't need to pray to God for myself. I'll tell you, you talk to God and you'll take care of it. Hey, I need to be forgiven. I just bring the goat, bird, whatever it is that I'm supposed to give. I give it to you. You do the sacrifice. You talk to God and you take care of it. And what this did is this whole system of worship kept me separated from God in a way that kept me safe because then it's not my responsibility. Hey, I don't have a copy of the Bible. You as the priest do. You will read it to me. You'll explain it to me. You'll tell me what I need to do, and then we're good. I don't have to put any thought in this at all. I just do what you tell me. And that's how I worship God. I don't have to put any thought in. Just tell me what to do. It's interesting. With the students, this all through Lent, we went through Holy Week. When we slowed down and went through Holy Week really, really slow. And there was a theme that went over and over and over again. Jesus is talking to the disciples, and he says, you know what? You have to remain rooted in me. You have to remain in me. You have to remain in my love. You have to trust me. You have to remain and be rooted in me. He says it so many ways, whether it's a fig tree on the way to Jerusalem, or which commandment is the most important, or even on the night he was betrayed. He's in the garden, in this vineyard, and he's like, see these branches? That's you. But see this vine? This is me. And these branches don't live if they're not connected to this vine. And over and over and over again, he says, you got to do this. Because God, in his infinite wisdom, Jesus is recognizing, hey, things are going to change. Because for the last 3 years, you know what the disciples did? Whatever Jesus told them to do. They didn't make any decisions. Jesus said, we're going to this town, we go to that town. Jesus says, we heal this lady, we heal this lady. There's no story of Thaddeus going, hey, Jesus, I got an idea. And Jesus going, that sounds great. Should we have a vote, guys? Like, no. You do whatever Jesus tells you. And now, Jesus is leaving. I don't get to just go to Jesus, hey, tell me how to pray. No, you have to know how to pray. You have to remain in my love, because now your salvation and your relationship with me, you got an active part in that. And these disciples now, they're going to start leading the church. They have to help others know about how to worship God, how to live for God, how to pray, how to read their Bible, how to do all this stuff. They can't just look to Jesus anymore. He's not going to be there. And Jesus kept saying over and over again, you need to be rooted in me. You got to be rooted in me. You got to trust that the Holy Spirit is working in your life. You've got to be listening. You've got to be attentive. You've got to be doing what you want, because now this is a big shift in focus. Like this final week for Jesus, the big shift was, I'm not going to tell you how to do any things anymore. You got to pay attention, because now it's on you. Okay, that was 2,000 years ago. How are we doing? I mean, how many times do we come to church, and I'll read the Bible if it shows up on the screen. Or I'll get a devotional if Pastor Mark puts it in Connection Central and it's all ready to go. Or I get the app push that tells me to read my Bible today. Or do I remember to pray because I'm supposed to pray? Or do I only pray when the pastor says, bow your heads with me? Or do I look for ways to serve and show people God's love? Or do I look for the church to organize something for me to do? And if I feel like doing it because it'll be fun in my schedule, then I will go and do that. Like, at what point do we go, but this is now my responsibility? Because the old way kept me safe, and now it's not as safe anymore. And so what we do a lot of times, not always consciously, but we'll do, is we'll be like, you know what? I miss that veil. And so we'll start hanging our own. What can I do to keep me safe? What can I do? Because if I get to know God too much, that's a scary thing. What if I get to know God so well that things start to change? What if the stuff I love right now doesn't seem as important to me? What if I would rather go to church than watch Purdue win? Like, what are we going to do? Hopefully win. But, what if I start to be changed and become more like Christ, so much so that people around me notice? And it's scary to think of what it means to give up and follow Christ for all that he wants us to be and live out this life that he's got for us. And so we think, hey, let's put up some safety nets. Let's put some veils. So here's what I would love you to do. If you've got these, I want you to pick it up. Because looking at Hebrews 9, at the end there, it says, Christ became our high priest. All these good things have come. He has entered that greater, more perfect tabernacle in heaven. Oh, I put the wrong verse up. My fault. So that his own blood, not the blood of goats and cows, he entered the most holy place once and for all. He did it once and for all. He got rid of this veil once and for all. Because what he did allows us to have that relationship with him. We don't have to go through an intermediary. We don't have anything in our way. We can know God for ourselves, which is honestly wonderful, amazing, and fantastic. But that came at a huge cost. For him to do that, for him to take on our sin, to secure our redemption, he had to decide, hey, I'm going to sacrifice myself. I'm going to take on the sin of anyone who will ask me, and I will be that price of forgiveness for them. I will pay that price of death and die in their place, which is fantastic. But then what do we put in our way so that we still have that safety? So I want you to think for a minute. I'm going to give you a moment to pray. Is there anything in your life that you want to remove so that you know God better? Is there anything that you're thinking of that, like, if I just would focus on this or do this, or even maybe not focus on this, this would help more? And actually, here's a scary prayer. If you want to pray, be like, Jesus, I'm not sure. Do you want to show me something that's in the way? That's a scary prayer. But it's going to require now another sacrifice. I mean, if you want to be closer to Jesus, if you want to remove whatever that is, we're going to have to take a moment and we're going to have to do that ourselves. We're going to have to start taking down the walls that we put up. So here's what I want us to do. I'll give you a moment to pray. Hold on to this. Look at it. Think about whatever it is. Give you a moment to be alone with Jesus and talk with him. Ask him, is there some way or something in our way that we can remove to know you more? So have a moment with Jesus. Okay, here's what I'd like us to do. If you want to get out your piece of cloth, we're going to do this together. And we're going to tell Jesus, hey, we want to remove stuff in our lives. Now, I want to say this. If you've been praying and you're like, I want to pray more about that, go for it. Don't feel like you need to do this. If you want to take it home and talk more with Jesus, you can. But if you want to do it with us, and you can even take the pieces home to remind yourself of what you decided to do tonight. But we're going to do this. Ready? Got it? I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to do it. Ready? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's pray. Dear Lord, I thank you for who you are, and I thank you that you love us. I thank you that you love us so much that you wanted to remove any barrier, anything that would be in the way of a relationship with you. And most of all, that's us. That was our sin, that was our selfishness, that was us, that was in the way. And you chose to be that sacrifice for us. You chose to give up your life so that we could have this separation removed and we can just be with you and be who you want us to be. I pray we'd never lose sight of the weight of that we would just live into that. God, and just be loved by you. In your holy name I pray. Amen. And hear now the rest of Psalm 22.